Okay, I think we're ready to go here. My microphone's even saying muted, unmuted. Figure out what. Okay, mic unmuted. So I think we're good there. And I had Task Manager just stopped responding. I have to come in and start this computer a little bit early. It was cold. Um, I got to a little bit later on, and it was just it wasn't responding from there. And so I went through and I had even forgotten to pick up a little bit of stuff. And I went, did that, and didn't even plan to bring in any breakfast or anything else like that. Um, which my my payment didn't work at the grocery store. I went in to get breakfast and an energy drink, and it went through and it said payment not accepted right away. And but greetings to everyone out there that is tuned in. And to address the earlier question, no, there's not going to be any paper clips involved. To the executive workstation, I'm gonna go through and hi Hugh. I'm gonna go through and actually that's going to be a recorded video. I'm not going to do that live stream, and I'm going to have a number of things standing by. I'm going to have the um, a spare Model 30 power supply, and probably even if I can, some leads that go in or extend a little bit long. I'm going to have, of course, what do we always do with the PS2s? We pull out that parallel port postcode reader, and that's going to give us an indication if things are ticking right at the start and just no videos coming up. I'm going to have a VGA board that works in an 8-bit slot. I'm going to have an additional VGA monitor around. And then I'm probably even going to have a spare riser with the battery on it and planer for the Mol 30 of that same exact type, same exact BIOS. I'm able to have enough of those spares around. So that's just about every major component of that unit. And it's only a diskette drive unit anyway. It doesn't have any hard drive on it. And I don't have anything prepped for like a XT IDE. I think Dave Murray did when he tried it and it failed. But I'm going to go into that and be a little bit prepared and have a video recording I can do. And I might go through in separate segments and record and actually edit things and put things together in a little bit more consistent manner. Yes, I know that I'm getting down to within or very close to 1,000 subscribers now. And that's the point that I went through and promised to do. In fact, I'm going to let's move the OBS up. Let's get this over. Let's create well, no, I don't know if I need another tab. Let's get that. Let's get some things otherwise started here. And yeah, why not? We can power up the ThinkPad back there too. And hi, John. Um, so we've got some pretty good flow in chat. Okay, planar VGA X, and so yeah, and that's a fair question while you're waiting. In fact, any question is fair in chat. I like going through and answering those. So the planar VGA of PS2s, that is an 8-bit subsystem. In fact, IBM had a board that was typically viewed as being for the MAL 30, although you could use it on XTs and ATs and clones, of course, that they had that first silver cap VGA chip, and it's on an 8-bit adapter. So the VGA implementation on the planar, and it's what, 256 kilobyte of RAM? So it's not really, as far as, I mean, that was introductory VGA. And so it was better than the other video standards that existed prior to that point that weren't high-end proprietary. On the PC side, I'm talking about better than EGA, better than CGA, better than MDA, of course, for graphics, for color graphics. And an analog system that was able to go through, had a lot more color depth to it. And so, the performance VGA wise on those systems it was enough for what those machines were introduced as. Now, the XGA2, and in fact, there's been a little bit of recent discussion within the Facebook group. Someone tried to go through and play a game that required SVGA and required the VESA plugin, the TSR, to go through, as often SVGA adapters have. And of course, it aired out, and it was looking for an SVGA with 512 KB. And in this case, it was an XGA2 video board that was in there. And there is a TSR that for the XGA2 that make it appear, as or emulate an SVGA adapter. XGA2, probably for that, I mean, it's better than XGA1, or called the non-interlace. And well, let me see. Non-interlace is, I'm trying to think if that's XGA2 actually. But it's, it's very good for bigger resolutions, colors, everything else. Maybe not very responsive as far as timing goes. In other words, it's not necessarily a good gaming video aspect, getting real-time responses and to go through and react to gaming. And it does up the VRAM to a megabyte. There was talk of whether there was a 2 megabyte VRAM XGA2. Never came through. There was even talk, hey, can you go through and put more than one XGA2 adapter on a system, on a PS2? And so, certainly XGA2 had its place in the market, but there's a lot of constraints there to talking about video performance in that aspect. And I haven't got into graphics performance all that much compared to that's just not been as much of my thing. I'm not a, as I've explained before, I'm not a gamer, a PC gamer necessarily, not in first person shooter or aspects like that, Donkey Kong or, you know, I mean, I did that stuff as a kid in arcades, but I'm just not. I just don't have that aspect with what I do now, and so you know, I wanted to go through, and I know it's been a while since I've done the announcement. I've gone through. I've got to actually do more cleanup and things like that too. Um, that I want to do the benchmarks of the Model 5657 um, soon. And I have all the planers separate for that, and to go through and to mainly it's a benchmark of the CPUs, not necessarily the video standard, even though that changed. Actually, I'm going through and wanting to test the CPUs from the base planer and go through and step through the CPUs. Now, the 8556, 8557 had the SVGA, the TI slash IBM SVGA, and which is supposed to be pretty good. If you go through and get the VRAM up to the 512 KB, which you can do also with the microchannel. There's the microchannel SVGA board that that's a good all around video performance. And then the 9556 and 9557, those units went to having XGA2 on the planer. Um, well, and but as you know, Chris, and happy to see you here. Video production is not necessarily everything that's cracked up to be. I think when I was going through into the 500, 600, 700 level, I think 800, I was feeling that, and there's just not enough data out there to know. But I felt if I did a video, I tried to do a video per day, and I felt that that was getting me one subscriber per day typically. It was going through and um but there's no way to for a metric like that to go to say okay, it's guaranteed to do that way. I think for for video production, I think that a channel probably typically needs to do, unless you're like Mark Rober big, I think that a video per week or video per 2 weeks. Um, LGR Flint is at 1.5 million subscribers, and he's done a he tries. It looks like he tries to do about a video per week on his main channel, and the uh, so that's probably works out to be pretty good for him because those big channels, I mean, you go through and it's amazing just in that you drop a video and within the first day you've got 100,000 views or something, I mean, it's just it or or maybe less than that, maybe well, Clint Big, you get that many views, but um, and that's how I gauge a little bit more of the viewership. I think at 1,000, I feel that YouTube, um, and it can be the commonality of your video titles and the matches to what people are searching for as well. But it just seems that YouTube recommends those a little bit more. And yeah, the SVGA adapter A, and so there's a little bit of confusion there because there's two SVGA adapters. And since I can and nobody really else can, I'm going to drop some links in the chat of what I'm referring to. So this is the IBM/Texas Instruments SVGA adapter. And it has a, so that has 512 KB of VRAM. It is a, yeah, and we'll get to YouTube videos about your fines and things like that. And I guess I should say that's Chris and Chris. I had retrocheck Chris as talking, referring to a lot of um, the subscriber level, but I'll get talking about that in a moment too. And even I think you're in a good uh, media area with Twitter as well. So going through, let me at least I get not wander around as much with what I'm saying for the video adapter. So I put a link for the what's known as the IBM SVGA adapter A, and so that's a good basic SVGA, and that was also on the 25SX planer. A lot of time there on the 25SX, it normally should have 512 KB of VRAM soldered in there. Or I don't think it was ever socketed with the 25SX. I don't think there was instances that you really see the 256 KB VRAM. But of course, with soldering in sockets, you can go through and you can add VRAM to it. And if you go over the 256 KB VRAM anyway, you want to run the VESA driver. And there's links on that page. And as we discussed, the 35SX and the 40SX, since they shared the planer, also have that SVGA chip on the planer for planer video. But they only have 256 KB of VRAM in place, soldered in place, and they don't have the sockets in there for the 35SX and 40SX. So if you go through and want to add VRAM, you have to pull it out, solder in sockets, or solder in the VRAM, acquire the VRAM chips. And that's not so hard to do. The VRAM chips are available out there. I've ordered batches of those. There's not really any cost to them. They seem to be authentic chips. They're not anything that is being remarked by Chinese and other vendors as something else. But I've done that upgrade on a 35SX, 40SX to show that it is possible, because there was questions right off. In fact, Peter Wentz said years ago, he said, "Oh, those the pins for the extra VRAM, that's just, it's non-operable. It's dead. It's you can't do that." And I don't know if he experimented at all. Peter experimented a lot. He went in there and did adaptations. I mean, he was handy enough with the soldering iron and things like that. But he just speculated that it couldn't be done. Um, and I went through there and empirically showed proof that it can be done for the 35SX, 40SX. Now, on the 8556, 8557 planers that also has that that SVGA chip, it actually has sockets in there for expanding the VRAM from the 256 KB to 512 KB. And so it's simply where you acquire the chips in there and you're able to plug them in. And I found, I didn't find the staggered sockets like I would need on the 35SX and 40SX. And I ended up actually just getting the single row round pin headers that I was able to solder in, and they are able to be put side by side to do that staggered arrangement, 20 pins and 20 pins. And they typically come in 40 pin segments. So you just actually clip one of those in half and use each half in those staggered pins. And it's a round pin. It doesn't have the wiper. It doesn't really handle the flat pins that the VRAM has quite so well. And especially since they're angled as they come out of the body of the chip, you can't necessarily cram them down tighter because the pins will actually flex and bend on you. And any of those pins break on that on that style of chip, it's gone. It's useless from there. And you're not going to go through and Dremel up on the body and try and solder in another pin in that arrangement. You're just going to go through and put another chip in or something else that they're, as I say, they're easy enough to acquire. But so you can expand the VRAM on the 8556, 8557 really easily. And that chip is also on the some of the ThinkPads. Some of the there's a range of ThinkPads that have, and it's not actually the same FRU that's marked on the chip. It's a different FRU. I think it matches a little bit closer to what's on the SVGA microchannel adapter. And then it has, of course, the different form factor of the, do I want to say, I'm trying to think of the, well, it's a dual pin surface mount, like you see for some of the clone PCI video adapters they had sockets for that dip VRAM, basically those chips. And so really there's expandability on that with that chip, that really a lot of that wasn't known for the aspect of how those that chipset, how many mols it was on and everything, until just even a couple years or 3 years ago. And so that's just it. That shows in this field, this retro PC aspect, how new things are being discovered. Yeah, SOJ, exactly, is that form factor of those VRAM chips, like on the ThinkPad level. And yeah, DIPS, SOJ. And so when you have the VESA driver in there, it makes for a great video system. Now, to a little bit of that level, there's also with that chip, there's also that PS1 Pro um, 2123 that was that model that was supposed to be the 30SX, but IBM did that and they put it in a Model 30 style case and released it as a PS1 that has the same video chipset as well. And I think a lot compared, it's the same planar as the PS2 Model 25SX, but they went through and of course the RAM that's on board soldered down in place is differs between the models. The external VGA, the external video connector on the back of the planar depends whether it's soldered there or not. And of course, on the PS1 style planar, it does have that external video connector. But it typically does not have the additional VRAM. Again, it has just the two chips of where it's 256 kilobyte total, and then it has just solder pads for the remaining to expand that to the 512 KB. So the that's all the systems. I mean, it's quite a diverse lot that's out there that has that SVGA, that TI/IBM chip in there that is pretty capable as far as SVGA is. And that really took the place of the original VGA that IBM had on those initial PS2 planers. That was just kind of the second step. The later release of the PS2 models had that SVGA chip on there. And so that's pretty good. Now, the other SVGA adapter is the Cirrus Logic. And of course, the Cirrus Logic, pretty common out there on the clone side, sometimes with some issues behind it. I'm going to put the link in there in chat as well for that. And so that typically included, and they call that the 1 megabyte short SVGA to distinguish that from the TI/IBM SVGA or the SVGA/A adapter. And so the Cirrus Logic chip, I mean, there's drivers out there. Reply use the Cirrus Logic video chips on all their designs. And so they included drivers and things like that. There was even at that link, there's even I'm just looking at my stats in the window. It's worrying about the audio bit rate. I don't know, whatever. But Cirrus Logic used it a lot. And of course, those rebranded IBM systems from the replies have that Cirrus Logic chipset stuff in there as well. And really, there's a lot more variety there of whether the sockets are included or not. For the VRAM expansion, typically they had 1 megabyte. That was the release level, and then you had sockets in there that you could take it with those SOJ chips to being 2 megabyte of VRAM. Now, there are some constraints there as well, because I think it was supposedly where the Windows 95, Windows 98 level that you'd be running on microchannel systems, that if you had that Cirrus Logic chipset in there, you could use the 1 megabyte of VRAM very effectively, but the drivers did not support 2 megabyte of VRAM. And I think that was the same way for NT. The NT driver was limited to 1 megabyte of VRAM, and could not use that second megabyte of VRAM if you added it to the video subsystem. And I think Unil tried to work a little bit on that. And I think there's the drivers from Cirrus Logic. They had a utility that identified the chipset, of course, and identified how much VRAM was present, and you could verify it there. But the main aspect, I say, is using the additional VRAM in the operating system. If your operating system didn't support it, that was it. Um, having a driver for those capabilities within Windows, and you might have the cases where the game supported it just because the commonality of that Cirrus Logic chipset. So there may have been instances there where games had the video components to use that as well. But those are the two areas, and really for that, I mean, I like to say I prefer the TI/IBM chip in there, that SVGA/A adapter, and it with a 512 KB of video RAM, it's a good roundabout video system, a good style. Now back to the XGA2 on the PS2E, that 9533. There is XGA2 that's on the planar for that, but it's an ISA design. And Peter Wendt always, ho-hummed the XVGA or XGA2 video in an ISA design, saying, well, that's not really all that grand or anything else like that. And so if you're measuring XGA2 performance, which may be a thing that I do later on, it might be good to compare those units, the 9533, just to see how that XGA2 performs on that. And the 9533 planar, that was supposed to go into some of the Model 35s and Model 40s as well, to create more of a high-end system on the ISA side. That planar actually had, it's got pads for a SCSI subsystem that IBM never implemented on it. And they're probably going to do a design much like the 8556, 8557, and 9556, 9557 had on the planar for that SCSI. And it really could have turned out to be an interesting planar for all that. It's just that it didn't really, it's pretty rare that you find a 9535 or a 9540 system that has that planar in it, with its spendability that you could put on the CPU daughter card, like the 46 SLC3. And so, yeah, I heard a little bit of chatter, Pip's channel, saying that talking about the DEB system, the 9556, 9557 DEB, and the DEB means the first and the third character in the submodel is hard drive, and they'll do even operating system, multimedia stuff, everything. But that E in the center is the 46 SLC3 CPU that runs at 75 megahertz in the 9556 and 9557 models. And I agree, that's a very peppy unit, and that has the XGA2 video. Those can be, as far as a 16-bit system out there, it just beats everything around for ultimately a um, a system that is 16 bits, that is 24-bit for memory support up to a maximum of the 16 megabyte limit. But you can get they make about the most peppy system that you can have around. And so, you know, I want to go through, that's why the reason I want to go through and benchmark a lot of that stuff and cover. So, and welcome to everyone that's joining into the chat as well as I go through. And I'll have to see. In fact, I need to get sipping on my energy drink here. Make it so I don't have gurgling noises here. I can mute my mic. Okay, so I'll go through and back to, um, and I'll extend this live stream a little bit because just the late start and everything too, the issues of going through and starting. Um, Back to the YouTube subscription angle. I mean, I know that there was some initial chatter on that. Yeah, even Retrotech Chris saying started making videos on my phone and going through for the if you want to start a YouTube channel, I advise it's sooner rather than later. And I've gone through, I mean, there's also the discussion in video making that I do a lot of the I don't edit my content. I just go through and I run OBS and I pause if I need to rework the set or whatever else, and I continue on from there. The so because editing for me takes time, especially if you're into the a high paced production of a video per day, going through and editing it as well. And with what I have, the rendering of a video takes about twice as long as what the video length is anyway. And then you still have to upload it. And if I do it from here, where I've got 5 or 6 megabit speed that I can do an upload on, or taking it down to my residence, I just take the terabyte drive that I've even got. This is video content. And I've got a dock that I put that in, and if I am here particularly late, I want to get a video uploaded, I'll take it down to my residence, and I have a 20 megabit or even a little bit slightly faster upload that I can do with it to get it up, and then I just bring it back the next day. I've got a comparable dock down there at my residence, and that's an easy way for me to pack around the size of the video files that I'm used to. So let me see if I can go through on, yeah, and then yeah, and I think I have a matrix luminator, I think. The radius, there's some really high-end video boards out there, but a lot of times some of them can be such a vertical market, or the limited drivers. I even have a number 9 like GXI or something like that. It's a 16-bit adapter. It's got the TI coprocessor video chip on there. you're supposed to be able to add a second one and more VRAM and things like that. And the thing it's got an incredible amount of VRAM as it is anyway. Um, but it's such a limited driver and other areas. And so it would be good to do some benchmarking of video performance in a baseline system, going through and plugging those adapters in. Now, with the microchannel world, the main problem there is you get to the aspect of the system. If the system has planar video, it doesn't have a BVE extension or the BVE bus section. I don't want to repeat the E, meaning extension. Base video extension is the base video for that system. That's the primary video that's on that system. And if you ever have a PS2 with built-in video, which is commonly the thing, you don't have a slot on that with BVE on it. And typically you have, of course, the AVE, the auxiliary video extension, and there are adapters. It's typically called the 8514/A extension. That the AVE is designed, adapter in that slot is designed to work with that base video system. So there's just a few systems, the Model 95 being one, the Model 85 being another, the PS2 Model 76 and 77 that are based on the Bermuda planar don't have planar video. So those are the test systems that could be used to put in a base video adapter. Now, a lot of the time, those high-end boards anyway, they're not designed to be primary video. They're the high-end or that vertical market of like CAD stuff or the computer-aided design, where you booted your computer and you had the primary video got you into where you need to go, and then you use that secondary video and display for something else that was more advanced in the CAD work or whatever you were doing to that. So there'll be a chance. I mean, it's down the road, but I probably would like to do a series of videos on the video subsystem of PS2s and pin down some benchmarks for that. Yes. And yeah, the target card. And there's still some software sometimes that are coming out or being discovered, or luckily being archived away on some of that stuff, but it's pretty bad that that a lot of time those systems were, if they were parted out and that high-end video board pulled out of there, it doesn't have the drivers. And a lot of that angle too is there are very high-end video subsystems that are on a microchannel adapter that are for the RS6000 line. They don't work on PS2s. They work, in the RS6000s, and again, that's typically very vertical level of video subsystems. And yeah, the NCR clarity video, yes. And there's even the aspect I went through and covered this at a level before, that I have some ATI GUPs. They got the green tabs on them. They're high end. They're very good video um, system. But a lot of time those things are um, the adapter has failed. There's components on there or something else that's died. And I have a couple of those that I need to actually go through and repair to get fixed. Um, so let's even address, and I have to even determine how long the stream was going on. If we got a good chatter and everything else, um, I I have no reason to go through and close down early or anything like that. But the the other aspect to the YouTube channel, you talked about. I know the Chris that's there now, Chris Satterfield, Comp Geek, going through, and I think the Twitter, in fact, your post on the Twitter platform is the one that kind of spurred me. I need to continue it. Actually, I've dropped off a little bit, but going through and having the Twitter post, using that avenue for posting content. And I know videos of any length, they don't do well on Twitter. You have a short little video. I think a lot of the strengths on Twitter is you can have a stream when you cover a topic, and you can have pictures that are uh, not downgraded or anything else, that you can put up on that tweet stream that go through and cover a topic very well, that interests that for that day you found this adapter, and you can go through and do pictures, and you can do um, just replies in that thread to that tweet, work out pretty well. In fact, Eric, for Tube Time US, he does that a lot on um, Twitter. Goes through, that's a very good platform for him to do those sorts of things. He also does the Twitch live streams, which I need to look at a little bit more. Something that maybe can parallel in there with YouTube. Um, and but Twitter works out pretty good a lot of time for a lot of the social media development, or what can be a particular platform for using in some instances. Um, so yeah, um, and so remembering the model numbers and all the little details, you have to remember a lot of that is my exposure that I've had over the years, um, to all the chatter that occurs about those devices. And that's how I remember a lot. And I've forgotten a lot of this too. But I like going through and going on the SIF news group and searching a lot of the time. Great to see you here in Commander. That's a name, a channel that I follow. I need to watch actually a little bit more of the video content that you've put up. Um, but greetings to you. You got the little emoticon with the hand waving. I'm happy to see you here. I'm happy to see Kevin has dropped by as well. And yeah, I'll talk about the token ring stuff. And I did, as you can still see the rig behind me. I'm trying to work with the token ring um, aspects now, and I showed that, and it's easy to get running for one private network that you have on a system like I do. In fact, let's do this. I can go through, and there's my Windows 2000 server chugging away for the screensaver, doing some pipes, and that's actually an Intel 815 chipset that's on this NetVista A40 that's behind me. And I've got a couple of the other systems. I need to actually combine and get one really good system going, get the cover on it, and get working with it a little bit more. I don't really have a need where I've had to have to really go and adjust things on the inside of that anymore. But I'm trying to go through and do the token ring stuff, and I don't even think I've shown it too much on video for some of the areas I'm stumbling on. Okay, so I have all these network interfaces on this system, and this is that IBM quote high speed. In fact, I'm looking for the box I have of that. Oh, there's the other router I want to work over today. So, oh yeah, it's buried. Of course it's buried. And a little bit tore up a box, but the that so-called high speed, that 100 megabit token ring. And I went through, I've got all the drivers, and I can actually do links when I come out with this a little bit more. Because I went through and I installed the driver here, and it gives me a lot of nice little things in here. You see just all sorts of stuff. You have your class of service, route switching, your resources. There's your okay, so I was wanting to look at, so the driver, and this is directly from IBM, just right 2000, but this version, and it's 5.14, I think, that was supposed to add to have the level where you could do the 100 megabit token ring. They went through and got the driver going, working correctly for that speed, supposedly. And of course, the links are likely, they go to the new content if they even work at all for this. But so within the settings, the network data rate, and you have 16 megabit per second, you have 4 megabit per second, or the automatically detect, in a sense, an auto level, the auto token ring. And the auto token ring stuff is really nice in a way, because you have a adapter in a system, you have it connected up to whatever network, and it can change to whatever ring speed is set. But in this instance, if I don't have any other station, and this is the same thing for an auto adapter anyway, if you have a network set up that's the first station to ring in, and there's no other stations on that are up and running, it'll go through for the auto and it just doesn't know what speed to set itself at. So when I do this automatically detect, I get that network cable unplugged. And that's typical for, like, if you have some of the cheap gigabit adapters on the Ethernet side, like the Broadcom, or even lower, the Realtek chip, on those gigabit Ethernet adapters. You can have equipment, a switch, a gigabit switch, basically, that chip just doesn't like that connection. And it'll tell you network cable unplugged, even though you have the proper network cable in there and everything else. And you have to down level the connection. You have to take it down and lock it into 100 megabit per second full duplex, to get the connection to work for you. And I don't know why this doesn't have a 100 megabit selection. Now, this driver is supposed to cover even Windows 98. I think they pulled the Windows 95 stuff out of this latest version, but I want to go through and install it on a Windows 98 box, and it'll have to be a desktop or tower. In fact, I may go through and use one of the other A40 units I have, and if that 815 Intel chipset doesn't work good for Windows 98, I'll have to come up with some other system. I have some other system out there that can come up with PCI, with enough of a chipset for Windows 98 to go through and install this driver and see if I can get it to the 100 megabit setting, because I'd like to have two stations. I'd like to have a link that I can go through with that 100 megabit token ring and you know, benchmark it just to see how it does for that 10 megabit speed. The and it was only in pretty much in PCI adapters. Madge and Olicom actually did also their own versions of this 100 megabit token ring as well. So whether those adapters are out there and possible to find them, who knows? But it'd be nice to kind of test that and see. But it was just strange that this thing just doesn't want to go through and for the drivers to go through and work at that 100 megabit rate. But this is going to be my unit. This is going to be my server that I'm going to set up for networking in retro systems that I go through to. It'll be able to cover all the 100 megabit per second Ethernet, the 10 megabit Ethernet per second. And even for all that, I brought in some routers I even have on the side, and even notes on them. And I mean, this is not my handwriting. This is where it was before. But this is even a nice little firewall system router from SMC. They call this the Barricade, and it's got even straight 110 power into it. AC, got a console port, and the WAN port there, and it's even got a print server. I wanted to get in. This is one of the items I forgot this morning and went to retrieve. I want to get into these units, and I'll probably end up even resetting it, just to use for go through the. I've downloaded the PDFs for configuring it, and I want to see how I maybe can incorporate this for the Ethernet side. The other so, and as I say, in fact, I've got the old an old D-Link router, and along with the Ethernet, I want to go through and get old wireless set up as well. And so just with the old WEP keys, or just a way to get on older clients that have wireless to them as well. Here's one that I've got. It even tells me the password, and it's only pinned on, and just basically should be new in box ReadyNet, whoever that's device. But getting these devices going now for the wireless aspect, in addition to that token ring stuff. And so Kevin even discovered, he went through and got it set up that that he could he took an 8227 and went through there, and normally that was a wireless access point from IBM. And in fact, let me go through. I'll put up the link for it. But it had a PCMCA wireless networking card on that. It had a external, like a little dome antenna, like the wireless was when it first came in. And I want to pull. Yeah, I want to get the 8227 link in there. Yeah, here's the 8227 page. And but Kevin went through and he did I went through and I pondered this one time. I said, "Oh, that thing has a PCMCA slot. Could you pop in a token ring PCMCA card and have it work?" And Kevin actually did it. Went through empirical testing. I'm going to have to chat with them a little bit more on that, as far as a little bit of the process, because that might be a little bit better update for my rig here, to where I have a couple of the 8227 units that I can go through, and I could have PCMCA adapters in there locked down to a particular speed, that 16 megabit per second or the 4 megabit per second speed, to go through and have that networking stuff connect up through my through a link. So so the wave, yeah, I remember the wave LAN a little bit, and these and the 8227, they actually have there's another flip adapter that's microchannel on one side and 16-bit or an ISA bus on the other side. And I have some of those adapters, and I need to go through and come up with a video for them. And it's just that the 8227 is the base station for that wireless LAN, and you had where it has an Ethernet, even has, like, I think an AUI port on the 8227, I think. And it's they're an interesting box. And so, as familiarization with a lot of the IBM network gear too. So when IBM made boxes like the A227 and I'm trying to think if there's some another one out there. Um, they went through and they integrated token ring within those units a lot of time, or the protocol, the token ring protocol was covered well enough in those devices. And that's maybe what Kevin found could work to the advantage of repurposing these 8227s as a bridge between Ethernet and token ring. And so I've got to follow along with it, his experiments, what he's empirically tested a little bit, and bring these things into service. So okay, yeah, the separate ISA and microchannel cards, but it's kind of neat for these early wireless from IBM, and I think these are like a megabit per second. That was the speed ultimately, which is of course pretty minor for what we would think of nowadays, but that's where wireless, got well, thank you. I really would like to go through and experiment a little bit more. I've got even that stuff set aside, but I've got to get organized to a large extent and go through and test that and just kind of see the capabilities that might do, because and I'm not, as I explained in video, I'm not really wanting to go through and have it to where I have retro systems that are networked in that I want to be on the internet, but I do want that capability sometime. Or at least being able to see across the network, across to the Ethernet side, to be bridged over to another network that I can have, where that's the easy way to transfer files and things like that too. So this is a little bit of my rig. I guess I'll go through and move through that. And I wanted to go through and see, I've got all this computer reset stuff I'm wanting to do as well, from my return from my trip. And I'm waiting actually for Clint to drop the other LGR video that he was recording when I was down there during the weekend. I was down there at Computer Reset 2 weeks ago. And I'm waiting for him to drop that other video. And he's done a couple other videos since then. But he hasn't covered that Computer Reset. And I don't know if he's just still doing editing or something else that way. Let me switch over to, okay. So looking at subscribers right now, I've got 994. And that's great. In fact, I like doing these live streams. It's I'll get in next week on Saturday for my live stream, and I'm going to go through and start up the computer a little bit sooner, and to where I have it responsive enough. I need to go through and get a desktop set up and actually get an SSD in it and get it to where it doesn't go through these things where it's 100% hard drive use. And the trouble is I have it tied into my OneDrive so heavily, and just Windows 10 goes through and it wants to these updates. Yeah, it's a common complaint out there, the Windows updates and things like that. Yeah, and really for all that, after April, that's when Computer Reset is shutting down operations. They're selling the building. For the Canadian portion, you have even Linus went in there and he bought some salvage stuff off and he did some a video on items he got from us buying the stock off of an old salvage place. Years ago in my area, we had even a guy that was doing salvage. You know, we had parts and pieces for systems, and that lasted maybe a year or two, and that was typically pretty small. That was just what he had. But the age of that stuff anymore, it just doesn't exist. It doesn't. I guess maybe it's gone online. It's eBay at eBay prices and things like that. Um, Now there is one little area that I want to get into. In fact, I haven't even started up my Facebook this morning, that I wanted to go through on. So the kind of the big news for me in the last day or so was that there has been a new, and I say new, I mean there has been a planer that's in the Mall 25 that has come up on the scene. Had a individual on the Facebook group showed a system, and they did interior pictures that it's a it's a planer for the Mall 25 that went it just goes through. It's ultimately a type 1 planer. It's got the same chips on there, but it's really got the chips moved around. And this is the image. I think this is even like 4 MB of picture effectively for the people that have metered uses and things like that. And so it's just I went through and I actually found one of these on eBay, and I contacted the seller. The seller wanted, by the time you get all shipping costs and everything else, that thing would have been over $150. And I went through and I made an offer. I told him, look, I'm just trying to document this. You know, I told him about the channel. I said, you can get a mention on the channel if you want. And they rejected my offer. And so I'll still have to work with him because I want to get a physical example of the board. But it just was interesting that this cropped up. You have to look at this is, you know, the Mall 25, which which wasn't in the initial. Yes, correct. That's it's a Panasonic or Matsushita logo on there, and I have a Mall 25 286 planer, which is also shared, of course, with the Mall 30 286. That's marked the same silk screening, the same sort of thing that we expect from the Japanese production angles that use that type of silk screening for the IBM parts and pieces. And so I'm ultimately trying to place what that planar is, and I actually should do this on Twitter as well. It's just been the last couple days, or last day or so, that this has really cropped up for me, and I need to put it up on Twitter, and just with some of the speculations, and Major Tom is actually going through and um, diagramming things as well. So an aspect of this particular painter, it moves a lot. There's not even that much difference between the conventional type 1 and type 2 planers on the Model 25. They there's not many components that are moved around. In fact, a lot of the time, the main visual reference between a type 1 and type 2 planer is the power lead. If you have the power lead at the edge of the planer, like this one is, it, um, and I actually should have been more prepared. I should have sized this image down a little bit so I could show it in OBS to everybody rather than putting the link up. But this one does have that power plug for the planer close to the lip of that planer, and the Type 2 has that more inboard to the planer is typically the way to tell them apart. And but this is a Type 1 planer that just takes and it mixes around so much more stuff. The video RAM chips are actually off in the other corner. And there's other components that are moved around. The 8253 interrupt controller chip is moved around. It's really amazing on the on how this happened. Now on the Mul 30, the 8086 based Mul 30, there are some planers that are very unusual in that as well, beyond the two conventional versions that are out there. That they have, um, there's one that I've seen pictures of that has a feature connector in there, um, and those are planers I'd like to pick up physically too. But it's just interesting how close to 30, at least over 30 years ago, but how all of a sudden that these are showing up and coming into being the awareness of being out there. I just find that amazing. Now, this Mul 25 planer does also have the ceramic RAM DAC chip on it, and that is typically an indication of an earlier planer with IBM. IBM started, they would produce a planer, they would have a ceramic RAM DAC on it, and later on they would typically go through and move to a plastic RAM DAC that would actually be on the planer. Well, the initial Mul 25s would have been, yes. Although later on, when you got to the 25SX level, and especially the EduQuest levels, those are marketed very heavily at the US-based schools and did not go elsewhere. Now, Chris does bring up Compute Geek about the Japanese thing, the production of this Mul 25 board, and talks about also the P70 being produced, and that is also true. And the silk screen just gives away these boards just instantaneously. When you see them, you know where that production came from. And even the P70, and there's been a lot of chatter on those lately as well on the Facebook group and elsewhere. And there's some nuances to those boards as well. I mean, the interesting thing was on the P70, the initial release of the P70 came out at the 20 megahertz, and then it was retooled a little bit, and the Mul that was released later, the planer that was released later, is a 16 megahertz and 20 megahertz 386DX. And they move some stuff around between that as well. But there's some behind the scenes nuances that Major Thomas discovered to those. Even in particular, there's a CPU ID functionality, or retrieving the reset signature of the CPU that's out there for all these PS2s. And on one of the P70 Muls, it has the call is the interrupt call is not present on that unit. It's really interesting. It's like almost like IBM kind of forgot that little component, and it's something that'll probably work its way out to a web page eventually on the P70. But um, yeah, and the Greenwich plant, and it's interesting because some of that aspect of the Greenwich plant, um, and what production level it had, is still being a little bit discovered as well there. Um, and that addresses kind of the little bit to the Mall 25, Mall 30 thing too, because there's just I believe that the original Mall 30, I don't think it was produced at IBM. I think it was contracted out for Seco Epson to produce, in particular the chipset and things like that. And that's something that we may be seeing with this Mall 25 planer, since it actually does have a ceramic RAM DAC and it has some of the components. That could be, and just about every planer for the Mall 25, that 8086 base version, is from 1987. But this could be an earlier example of the Mall 25. And that goes back to the aspect of the executive workstation, that 7496 that I'm going to be working over here real soon. Because if I'm at 996, 994 subscribers is the current count. And so I'm 6 subscribers away from 1,000 at this point. And so that the video on the executive workstation is going to be coming out. I have to decide a little bit more of, I'll probably try and go through that one. I might try and edit a little bit better and do a little bit of putting a little bit more effort into the production level, because I think for all that, the executive workstation, it's been, so Dave Murray, the 8-bit guy, did that video that really just flopped and had aspects that raised so many questions on how he did that. He did that in September of 2020, and that he so it's been at the point where I'm going to produce this, it's going to be about a year and a half later. And I think that even for the search term, that 7496 executive workstation, I think that's going to be a little bit more of a topic, a little bit more of a video that people are going to look for. And there's the other units that were there at Computer Reset, and there's probably still a few around, were also being put out at the point that mine was put over to me. And a short, yeah, the accent on short for the paperclip aspect. But and I mean, I'm not going to go into the controversy or anything else. I'm going to move forward with the unit I have. I even have to see which unit I have, of making sure that it wasn't the unit that he went through and worked on. I haven't pulled, and I'm totally honest with this, I haven't pulled that thing out of the box. I went to Computer Reset, and let me tell you, it was where I did not ask for the unit. I expressed an interest that if there was one available, that I would like to have it. But it was all planned ahead of time, that when I came by, the primary volunteer that there is there at Computer Reset, Kevin Trinkle, that he would that I would be handed a 7496. And we looked through it initially. He pulled out even the keyboard box, um, and I think opened it, commented, "Hey, that's the Model M that's in there. It's brand. There's a lot of value that people put in those keyboards now." But put it back in and close the box, and we got it to where it was carried out to my table and loaded onto my van. I've moved that box around, but I've not opened it otherwise. I've even got my van right now. I've got on the passenger side with the way that I parked the van up against the building. You'd have to move the van to even get the box out of there. And I've started getting set up for the video that I've got those parallel port postcode readers with it. So I have one of them handy. And I'm even not knowing. I'll probably have to do it up here at this studio, because the other studio that I'm trying to arrange right now is not in enough of a production level um, to handle this right now. And I should probably start doing it in segments. If I'm at 6 subscribers shy of 1,000, I maybe need to start recording some segments, and then by the time I edit it and everything else, then that's right as I crest into 1,000 subscribers and would release the video. And of course, after the video's out, the discussion from there, I'm happy to do that on the my live stream here. And well, and that's the unfortunate thing is my van, especially with the trip I made down the computer reset, it's a staging location for storage. And my storage locker that was broken into, and nothing luckily looks like it was taken, at least on the computer side. I think they grabbed a tent and a sleeping bag that I had in there. Um, and probably was a tweaker that is used to going through and living outside, and that tent and sleeping bag is probably very handy for them. That sleeping bag was rated, and they didn't take the over bag that I had in there, which is a smaller package. But that was like a -10 slumberjack sleeping bag. So they're probably staying warm enough um, in their little tweaker place that they live in, whether it's out in the woods or whether it's in a house with broken down windows here in town or whatever. But my storage locker, that's full. I've used the overflow. In fact, I've had to move some stuff around from storage I've had available that it's really, I need to get organized too. And I think that's today as I go through and the day progresses. I do have one other appointment that I got to get by and look at some network cabling for someone. But I think today, or I'd like to get and start moving things around and getting things situated better. And I've been saying that to myself for half a week, and I need to get the effort into it, and that actually gives me a good ability to get exercise and go through and um, exert myself a little bit to where I can uh, get some of the spare tire and everything else that I have on here. But I think this has been a very good stream. I really enjoy this time spot on Saturdays of going through, and just with the late start. In fact, this has gone longer. It's got to been an hour and a half of true content, and I'll go through and I can certainly and of course I always say I can go through and edit uh and pull the leader off the star of the video and things like that just to get it down to actual content. But I'm going to go through just the last little bit of looking over the chat stuff. I know it's been I've really liked all the participation and everything else. I do thank everybody for tuning in. Um, but I'm going to go through and close down the stream because we've all got other things that we need to go through and get started with today. But I do appreciate everybody tuning in. So as I say, that this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.